Well, like every creative person, I suffer from depression. I'm sure there are studies and books about it, but I think it would be too depressing to read them, so I don't. And yeah, since my childhood on, it has become, it's had its ups and downs, and of course, there's this age when you start to realize uh, that it's actually depression you are suffering from, and that you're not just I don't know, more sad than other people, or more uh, I don't know, yeah, more depressed. The words fail me here. So it's always, music has always had an emotional impact on me, but I think the first one, the original emotional impact on me was a positive one. It was more like it caught me, and it gave me a good feeling to listen to a certain rhythm and to a certain melody, and it felt good. And probably through then starting to make music myself, I started to see that it's easier for me to make music that doesn't make me feel good. And so through that, I probably also started to appreciate music that's not what probably the mainstream appeal of music is to most people. That it's a tool. You want to go out and have fun, and you turn on music that makes you feel good and gives you energy, and that's what's on the radio. On the radio, there's only stuff that has a certain positivity to it, so people don't want to kill themselves when they turn on the radio, and then they buy products that they advertise. So the vast majority of people listen to music for the same reason they uh, I don't know, drink beer. And then there are people who have a very strong relationship to music, and for them it can transport everything else besides of wanting to dance and feeling happy. So yeah, I think I only started to learn that through trying to make it myself, because I think also it touched me originally the same way, as a positive way, especially hip hop, which is very rhythmic, and the beat of hip hop is probably why I still see myself in that category, or why I still like to make that kind of music, because for some reason the beat just has touched me in a certain way that it's always there. And so for me, it's almost the only reason, or the only, maybe not reason, maybe more the only uh, purpose of making music is to express emotion. But it's not very important to me what kind of emotion it maybe causes listeners to feel. It's interesting, and it's sometimes funny, and sometimes even enraging when people completely misunderstand my music. But that's also fine. They can misunderstand it and take it as whatever they want. But it's just, really, I really don't care that much. I care that people listen to it and then tell me about it and feel something to it. But it's just because it's interesting, not because it has any effect on me, because the important part to me is what the emotion that I was originally trying to express. And I also think that it's not often that I listen. Well, there's probably two kinds of listening to music. So when I hear something for the first time, I don't know what to expect, and then it has a certain emotional impact on me. But then I know it already, and then when I listen to it again, I listen to it because of a certain emotion that I already am in or want to feel. So it's become rarer and rarer with age that it only happens about, I don't know, maybe twice or three times a year that music has a real emotional impact on me anymore. Because I often just listen to stuff I want to hear at a certain time. And then I hear a lot of new stuff that just doesn't touch me anymore. Because, of course, you also become a snob if you make music, so only stuff that you, in your own opinion and in the certain way you like music to be, see as really good, still manages to get through. So that, it happens very rarely that it still touches me in a way that it blows me away. But it still happens. It gets less and less, but it still happens. Since I also make absolutely no money with music at all, I mean, I do in theory, but it's such a low number that it's ridiculous to even think about. So I try to even ignore it, because when I think about it, it's just depressing how much effort through how many years I put into it to know nothing that I can see in numbers, or that shows in the way I live, or that gives me food or anything. It's just it's such a ridiculous relation that I don't want to think about it. So for me, it's still maybe not joy that I would get out of making music, but I still do it for the very same reason. I know I just recently talked to someone who for years made their living with art and stopped doing it on purpose because it robbed them of the joy they had making art, and are now looking for a profession to learn and to make a living off, so that it can eventually come back to art and enjoy it again. And I have never lost that, because I've never been in a situation where I had to do anything for it to work, because it was always so little that I got out of it that it just didn't make any difference. And I never took the step of, okay, now I'm making this because I know this will, or I believe that this will work and everybody will love it, and then I will make lots of money and tour Japan and my face will be on the Mount Rushmore of pop music forever. I probably couldn't do it, but I could maybe take a step into that direction, and I never really had it, because I also don't trust it. From the experiences I had with the way people consume music and the way people promote music and the way people sell music, I believe if I tried to make something that I thought would work on a mainstream level, there would still be so many ways for other people to fuck it up. And the frustration of how things have been fucked up on such a small underground level already, I don't think I would handle it very well if I thought, oh, this can finally give me independence of I don't know, working for money, and independence of capitalism, and I'm set for life, and I have a place to live and stuff to eat, and I don't need to worry every day about how I will be able to pay my rent next month because I don't have any money. but I just have that feeling that there would be a way for someone else to screw it up for me. And I obviously can't do it by myself, or I would have found ways to do it by myself, even on the small level, but I can't. I'm completely incapable of it. As soon as you choose it as your profession, and I don't have the feeling that I ever chose it as my profession, but if you choose it as your profession, then it gets another dynamic, and all of a sudden you are forced to do something that you used to do because you liked it, because there has to be, I don't know, yeah, there has to be a product on the market for people to give you money for so you can survive. But to me it's still much more, I want a product on the market that anyone will listen to, because it doesn't realistically, that doesn't happen. There are so few people that listen to my music that don't know me personally. There's almost nobody in if you look at a big picture, at a bigger picture. So nobody really cares for my music. I say that often, and usually the people try to downplay it and that it's not really true, and that they care for my music and there are other people who care for my music. And of course that's true. There are people who listen to my music, who like my music. There are even people who spend money for my music every now and then. But realistically, and that's probably where it gets to megalomania, but from how important I think my music is to how it is perceived, there's a very, very big gap. And then, of course, it gets to the point where it gets frustrating how shitty and unimportant and completely bullshit music is that people are willing to spend a lot of money for, and what they see as important, and it means nothing. And the people who make it know that it means nothing, and it means nothing to them. And for some reason that works. And it's an old topic, and everyone who's ever had any creative output and tried to get an audience for it has probably talked about it a million times, but it's never stopped being frustrating, and I've never figured it out why is it that way? Who is to blame? There are so many factors, and I don't know the answer. I could blame my label for my record not selling better, which is maybe part of the problem, but not the problem. I could blame myself for it, and it's part of the problem, but it's not the whole problem. I could blame the opinion leaders, which is a big part of the problem, in my opinion, but not the problem. And so there's all these possible people to blame for why there's actually good stuff, but only the really, really, really shitty stuff gets any interest. I don't know. I will never know for sure, and that's something you will just have to find a way to arrange yourself with. Just find a way to be content with the ignorance of the majority of people, and be happy that no one will be interested in what you do if it is good. And just detach yourself from the need to reach an audience, because even though there's some, of course, economic reasons to do it, and also just ego reasons to do it, I think you have to detach yourself from it as good as possible to not stop and not give up and not be depressed about it. I believe there's no one in the German-speaking world that makes music like I do. There's nothing I would compare myself to. I see myself in a scene, and I see a lot of people that make great stuff internationally and in the German-speaking world, but there's no one I can be compared to. So that's already a problem, because you can't explain what I do by comparing it to this other guy who does the same thing. It's unique in a certain field, and therefore I think that should be the reason why everybody should listen to it, and everybody should want to listen to it, because there's this guy that makes the stuff that's totally different from everyone else. That's automatically interesting, right? But instead, they'd rather listen to an 80s cover band. It's tough somehow, because I'm stuck between wondering how it's possible that this good music is so successful. So wanting to figure out what happened that this could reach such a big audience. Because if I was able to figure that out, maybe I could learn something from it and apply it to my own music. So it's somewhere between wanting to understand what steps were necessary so this good music could be so successful and reach such a big audience, to maybe apply it to my own music on the one side. On the other side, there's envy, because I think that I also make good music, but I do not reach that audience. And then there's also the problem of maybe that means that my music is not that good, and therefore it can't reach that audience. So that's the triangle, I think. None of these things really are helpful in any way. So you can just turn around and look at all three sides of it, and then, continue to turn around and look at all three sides of it. And also, if I look too much into the direction of maybe my music is just not good enough, and it's not just that it's too weird or too dense or too complicated or too depressing or too angry or too whatever, but it's just not that good, then the only effect, the only way to escape from that is to stop making music. Because I wouldn't, if now that I've did this for such a long time, and I would really start believing that it's not good enough, I wouldn't trust being able to get better enough to even try to continue. So the only option would be to stop, and that's not really an option that seems healthy, because I don't know what I would replace it with, because there is no other thing in the world that I have even a remote interest in. Nothing. There is no way of creating an income that I care for in any little way. There's just nothing. There is nothing for me to gain from work, as we call it. There's just nothing there for me. So if I need money, I have to do it. So I try to find the stuff that seems the least painful for me to do. And it's still pretty painful, but it's manageable. And I can then, it costs me about 90% of my energy, and then I can maybe still invest 5% of the energy into music, which is a very, very stupid system, but it's apparently necessary. So I've tried, of course, to switch these percentages around, but it never works for a long time, because nobody gives me any money for my music. It's basically it's not really a spectrum of options. It's a yes or no thing. It's either music or it's nothing. That's just so there's never been anything else. I've been interested in other creative outlets. I did videos for music. I was thinking about writing stories or books, and I did some of it. And that's also interesting, and it's fascinating. And but I still feel at the end of the day, all I could take away from it, besides all the things, the general handling of tools it needs to do that stuff, I would still basically learn stuff that then would apply to my music. As in general in life, it's just the way my music changes is just the way my life changes. So yeah. In general, hope is a concept I can't really. It's not a word I can trust. Let's say it that way. It's very abstract, and it also requires to ignore a lot of things to hold on to it. It's like God, or like I don't know, any esoteric or religious thing. Hope is kind of the same thing. You know better, but yet you hope because you want to hope, because you feel if you don't hope then you've given up. But yeah, it's not like there would be things I would do different if there was no way to reach an audience, but I still would do basically the same thing. It would maybe be in another form. I would maybe act different. Maybe that would make the music sound different, but it's not really. It's not a question. It's not, oh, I'm trying it now until I'm 40, and when I'm 40 and I haven't reached a certain point, then I will stop because I failed. It's not a failing or succeeding thing. That's not an option. Also, which maybe also makes success, because success is also not an option actually there. So maybe that's also part of the problem. It's not in question that I will have to do it. It would be hypocritical, because I've been talking about reaching an audience. Why do I even want to reach an audience? It's for two reasons. It's first to ego, to stroke my ego, and for other people to confirm to me that what I do actually means something, except for myself. It means something to someone else. It actually transports something outside of myself, on the one hand, and on the other hand, I would love to be able to not have to spend my time and energy on other shit that I hate and that hurts me and it's horrible and painful to make a living. But so if I could reach a big enough audience and actually make a living of what I like doing, then I could actually be happy. And of course that's a goal, but it's also a very unrealistic goal, and I know that. So most of the time it's a struggle to just accept the reality of irrelevance. And there are moments where I'm totally fine with it, and sometimes even longer stretches of time where I'm fine with the knowledge of irrelevance of myself and my music. But of course, there's still the part of me that's also important to making the music that actually wants to matter and that actually wants to express something and that actually wants to leave something behind and leave an impression. So I think that's probably the eternal struggle of creativity, is to find the mixture, the right mixture of accepting and being aware of your irrelevance and still doing stuff that you want to be relevant. And even that's probably even for people who are successful, who make a great living of exactly what they want to do. I'm sure they have the same struggle, just on a different level. So they still, I'm sure, haven't actually reached any goal, because there is no goal in creativity actually. There's no end point you can reach and then you're done and then you can die. It's the process that's actually the important part, I think. So it's a cliche, but it's true. If I could make a living and survive of purely spending time making music without ever making a product off of it, without ever finishing it to a way to hand it off, I could probably be happy with that too, because the process is the thing that drives everything. So there are these little goals in between, but there is no goal to reach. There is no end point. And therefore also no success and also no relevance. And that's, I think, the struggle.